Like tech-wise?
Hmm.
Or like what-wise?
Life-wise, I mean, tech-wise, I mean, I'm also interested on your like releases of any things in the diabetes or tech world for sure. I'm waiting on the moment when the diabetic is gonna give me an interview via the Apple Vision Pro.
Yes, the Apple Vision Pro I think is good. Right, we should be live now. Not, you can't see us. They can't see us, but they should. Let me just check the feed on YouTube. Just to triple check. Apple Vision Pro I think is good. I mean, I'm gutted it's not.
Do you think it's gonna go well for Apple, or you think
Apple
it's
Vision
gonna
Pro I think is
flop?
good. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I do. I think Apple Vision Pro I think is going to be good. Right, we should be live now. Hello,
Ooh.
everybody. Thank you for joining. Let us know if you can hear or see us. We going to wait a few minutes because I had to start a new link because I idiotically deleted the old one. Hello, people can hear us. This is great. Hi, John. Hi, Alex.
Hey,
Welcome to Tech on Tap.
I hope everyone else has a tab as well, so there's not just us.
Oh yeah, no, 100% will be. I told everyone to bring a drink, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, and I'm buying one person on the stream a drink. I'm gonna select someone and ship them their favorite drink, non-alcoholic or alcoholic, to their front door. So one,
Nice.
so one drink on me to whoever wants to share a photo of them watching us tonight in Tech on Tap. Um,
Yes, and they can choose a drink.
They
You
can
want to
choose the
say?
drink. Yeah, you're not allowed to participate because you're my guest. But I can also ship you a drink if you want. Oh, actually, you'll be in London in a few weeks' time, so I can buy your drink personally.
I
Actually,
don't know what to say. Well, I'll pay you a drink in the bar we did it last
yes,
time.
yes, we can do the in-person version of this in a few weeks' time. Cool. Hi, hello everybody. Right, cool. We are live. This is very exciting. Thanks all for joining. So yeah, welcome to Tech on Tap episode 1. It's an idea I had for a really long time to just link up with some cool people from the diabetes tech space and chat about random, interesting things. And I couldn't think of a better person to actually have on my first episode as Lukas. Diabetes Cockpit, app that I've talked about so many times, online and offline, used personally for such a long time. So I'll be asking you loads of questions because I'm an addict user of it for a long time. Hi, Lukas.
Thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure. I'm gonna get red if you keep on giving me comments. I'm happy. I
Um,
remember, I remember I sent you the first version of it, and you were very, very generous with your feedback and checked it out. So for me, you've been a part of the project in some sense, I would say, of like a good voice of feedback. And so
yeah,
I'm very happy about that.
yeah, thanks for that. So why don't we like dive in straight away? Actually, so I'm gonna
Go
try
for
to
it.
describe the app myself, and then you let me know what whatever you think is an accurate description. So Diabetes Cockpit takes data, takes loads of information from either your Apple Health, which is a library of all of your health information on the iPhone only at the moment, or a geeky thing called Night Scout that probably most people watching this will know about, and presents it in cool diagrams with colors. Can that
Uh,
go on your marketing slide?
For sure. Lots of charts, lots of numbers at the moment. And also Apple and Night Scout is completely correct, yeah, for sure. If I would have described it, I would probably add one sentence where it what was important for me was that it kind of does a bit more than just give you like an average. I wanted it to describe behaviors a bit more and kind of add a missing link that was missing in some apps in terms of context of your life. But I mean, there's also going to be charts, so that your version is still correct for
Right.
sure.
And so, yeah, so obviously with there's so many. By the way, what are you drinking before we dive in? What are you actually drinking?
It's called, you see this? Wieselburger, it's
Yeah,
called.
so
My
this is why I
favorite
thought
beer.
someone from the continent who knows their way around alcohol would be such a good person to have on the first episode. So because we should actually say you're calling us from Austria.
Austria, yeah, Vienna, Austria.
Vienna, yeah. So what was that? Is that cider, lager? What kind of beer is it?
Lager, I hope. I hope people don't. I hope I'm not wrong. I'm not a beer expert. I just like how this one tastes, and I drank this always with my friends, and I was a lot younger than I'm now.
All
and
right.
So that's kept my favorite beer.
Yeah, lager is my favorite. I'm not into. I've got a BrewDog, the Planet First lager, one of the carbon negative beers. I haven't actually looked into this, but yeah, one of their beers that actually allegedly takes more carbon from the atmosphere that they produce as part of the brewery. So yeah, cool. So yeah, so you mentioned, tell us like what, because there's so many apps, and we should say, obviously it started as a kind of project for you, completely doing it on your own because you felt like you wanted to do something cool, but it is like a proper app. It is now in the App Store, so anyone can download it. It's not like many of the community projects where you actually need to go and download something from the GitHubs of the world. It's in the App Store. So what? Yeah, talk us through that.
How that came to be. That is now actually. Well, I'm trying to be brief. You can hook in where it seems interesting. I think the original case why I thought about doing it was that I felt through my job, which was in the diabetes space for the last 10 years, also in the digital diabetes space.
Yes.
I came across a lot of apps, as you said. There's like loads of apps out there, open source as well as in the store. But my therapy wasn't going as well as I hoped it would be. And it was very upsetting for me, like in a personal sense, because I was like working in the field day in and day out, and I was still not as good as I thought I wanted to be or could be or should be, whatever. I mean, we all have these ideas, I think. And so anyway, I did some data analysis of contextual data, meaning like location and like what I ate, because I was looping already at the time, and so I had this type of data.
Yeah.
And it turns out that there's a lot of behaviors, because, for example, I would not take a lot of walks after I eat.
Right.
And I want to start do that because it personally helps me a lot. It's not a recommendation, but for me it helps. But there was no app that could track my exercise along with my blood sugar properly, or that could track another behavioral thing that I wanted to change that I thought would help me in my diabetes therapy. But there was no app to do that. And so I started creating one out of the sheer need to track behaviors that I wanted to track that I couldn't in other apps. And so I shared that with the community at some point because it really worked well for me. And then they kind of, especially the Loop group on Facebook, they kind of pulled it into existence to some extent, I would say, because I posted a little bit about them, and then there was like a very good feedback. We were like, give me this. Like, I want to, whatever you have there, I want to also try. And so it was actually only for me, but then it kind of got pulled into existence by the Loop group and kind of snowballed from there. And a couple of friends of mine also joined to help. And now we're here. We released on the App Store a year ago, a bit more, I think. Officially, it was a while on test flight as well, but the release on the App Store was quite a bit of a step, because there is some, let's say, considerations you have to take before you release on the public App Store that the Loop, for example, has to jump through. There's no direct liability for anything that happens from test flight. So it was a bit more of a hoop to jump through, but I'm very happy to do it because I do think that the messages I receive from people show that it helps them and it does support them. So that was kind of how that happened. It was actually only for me in the beginning.
Right.
And then people caught on to some extent, the looping community, and then kind of willed it into existence, I would say.
Yeah.
I think that's the best description for how that came to be.
Yeah,
I would say.
I relate to the looping thing because obviously I've been a DIY looper for quite a long time, and I've always felt like there was just so much information that I wasn't really utilizing to its full potential, just because there's so much stuff. And as a finance analyst, data analyst in my day job, you can do so much analytics with information, but when it comes to your actual health tech, we really don't utilize anywhere near the amount of information we really could. So from day one when you reached out with the idea, I was like, this is cool. I need to start testing this. So yeah, I was really on board. I'm going to say something that is a compliment, but hope you take it as a compliment. I use your app all the time, but I never actually open your app. So I love the interaction model of using Cockpit with widgets and the notification it does. So I pulled on the screen a few screenshots, and then the last one is the widget and notifications powered by AI. So I actually wanted to go in kind of reverse order from that one. Talk us through, I'm really curious on let's actually start from the beginning. Tell us about the insights Cockpit does. Kind of how does it combine different pieces of information together, and how does it generate insights?
That's a good point. And that was one of the later things that got added, because I kind of built up to this.
Yeah.
But it was the inside tab or the inside section was the last one that I had in mind.
Right.
Like this moment I started doing it, that was what I was leading up to.
Yeah.
Because the idea was, I have so much data from looping, and we have so much. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of data in diabetes nowadays with CGMs, with contextual data, and carbs, maybe an exercise, at least if you were an Apple Watch.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to know, like, if I do more steps, actually, does that help me in my therapy? Like, if I do more sport, is it actually gonna do better? Because I know from my doctor and from my whatever caregivers, you should do more of this and more of this. It's a very big difference for me if I can see it. Right. And so what here was, I wanted to visualize and search, just for me, but also obviously for the other users, what insights or connections I could find. Like, what is really connected to what in my therapy? Is my standard deviation actually better if I do more sports? And is it like, if I do more like of a certain behavior, is it actually going to affect my therapy? And I wanted to know, for me, not in general, a general statement, because I feel like if the more personal the message is for you, the more it sits. And so that was the idea behind it. Is it like it's minimum version, I would say, but the idea behind it. It should help you understand connections between different behaviors and results of your therapy, if you want to call it like that.
Yeah, because I think step one is just actually visualizing the information, because there's so much, and obviously this is kind of iPhone exclusive, so the closest thing we can compare it to is Apple Health, probably. Like, there is some insight in Apple Health to actually visualize the data, but I always found it so context specific. Like, you can visualize your health data and just your health data. Like, you can see your graph going, like, on average, I sleep for 7.3 hours. I know it's bad, you should be 8 hours, but I never achieve anywhere near that. But you can visualize like one thing at a time. And with Cockpit, I found, actually, can I just say, it's actually a miracle I'm still using Cockpit correctly, because the word Cockpit, because every single time I think of Cockpit, I think of Copilot because of AI. And in my head, the number of times I'm thinking Diabetes Copilot, which is, for those of you who don't know what Copilot is, the Microsoft name for all of their techie things. They call them Copilots, but like, it genuinely so reminds me of Copilot. It's like a Diabetes Copilot, but I'm using the correct name. It is Cockpit, not Copilot. So yeah.
The first time I told people the name, if you want to hear funny stories, everyone was like, "Oh, that's a cool idea," but the name isn't final, is it?
Really?
Like, almost everyone went, "Oh, a cool thing," but the name, But it kind of stuck around.
It obviously is Cockpit, like, related to the plane Cockpit.
Yeah, exactly. Or mainly the plane.
Yeah. Speaking of, I linked up with someone on Instagram recently, a cool dude from the UK, and he's a train driver with type 1 diabetes, and he also flies planes with type 1 diabetes. Like, something that I never thought was like a thing. Well, I wanted to be a train driver my whole childhood. So just...
Oh, we're not allowed? We are?
Yeah, so he works for... I'm not going to reveal the train company he works for. I wouldn't ask him for permission. But so he's the actual, like... And I didn't know that was like a thing until... I think laws changed quite recently where that's actually like allowed. So Cockpit just reminds me of planes, and they remind me of trains. So visualizing data, I think, is such a key part of the experience of the app. just seeing, and you can so quickly do your own insights based on the first tab. The hopefully people can see the understand your diabetes at glance thing at the bottom of the screen. Just seeing how those things change in correlation to each other. Like you can so quickly spot differences of time and range with exercise or sleep patterns, etc. And I think that's really what your inside tab is doing in a more mathematical way, linking whatever that's sleep and activity with time and range.
Some of the work off your shoulders and do it for you. I think
Right.
technically, if you stare long enough at it, you could figure out most of the things by yourself, probably. But what the next step is doing is just doing it for you, so that you don't have to go in and try to okay, scroll up and down, because that's what I did in the beginning.
Right.
So that was the next logical step, is taking that load off your shoulders, I would say.
Right. And it's so important, but it is so nice as well. Like I like the UI. It's like so Apple-y. Like I like it. So yeah, as I started this segment, I use it all the time, but I never actually open the thing, which I don't know if you intended that to be the use case. Probably not. But I love so I have it as part of on the homepage of the iPhone. You can have your stack where you have multiple things going on your homepage. If you use an Android, this might not be a term you're familiar with. So on your homepage, you have all of your icons for different apps. But now you can have a little 2x2 window where an app can show you something. So in terms of Cockpit, it shows you different pieces, different tiles that traditionally would show you in the app. So talk us through how it chooses what to show you.
So the idea of how often you should open the app was actually a point that I asked myself.
Right.
And I think it depends a bit on which area. So I would say generally, I'm not sure if I open the app every day. Like there could be a day where I don't go into it myself,
right?
Potentially. Because I think it was more kind of an idea of like checking in with a therapy for if you sit down for 2 minutes somewhere, you have a minute or a quiet minute in the train or something, you can actually just look at what's going on a little bit, and maybe you gain a new idea for something. And for this like daily quick glances, that was exactly the idea behind these widgets, and iOS supports this wonderfully, and they look just like the ones in the app. So it was a very natural idea to just bring them to the home screen.
Right.
So you can actually build a small cockpit screen on your iPhone if you want, out of like just 4 or 5 tiles. On one of your pages. And so you can actually configure a number of different metrics that are in Cockpit to be on the tile. The one that Apple is choosing, these smart stacks, I think there is some Apple magic going on in like which specific one they show you.
Right.
And I'm not aware, but you have, I think, like 7 or 8 metrics that you can choose from. I think something.
To me, I think time and range is the one that I think pop up on mine quite a lot. I tend to enjoy that one. It's quite good. And also the pure notifications. Like I'm very strict on apps which allow have access to my notifications. I think like the notification thing is mad. Like as society, like we need to manage so many things in the world, but like notifications is one of them. Like people have way too many notifications turned on, in my opinion. For most apps actually. So, but like Cockpit, I do have the silent ones where it doesn't buzz me, but I can see it when I choose to go into the notifications to see that. Right. So we've talked about the visual representation of data and seeing insights like that. I wanted to ask you about the SAM function.
Ooh, yeah.
So
that's a classic topic.
ChatGPT is probably something most people listening to this have heard about. If you haven't, it's the way you can talk to the internet. You go to chatgptai.com and you can just ask any questions you would normally Google, and it tells you things. And you've built that into Cockpit to basically interact with your diabetes information through a chat instead of looking at it, correct? Talk us through that.
Correct. So when this came about, when the idea came out in the day, and OpenAI, which is the platform that we're kind of integrating, so we didn't we can't take credit, or I can't take credit for like building the intelligent part about it itself. I'm just integrating it with the app.
Yeah.
And I'm doing like a careful integration with it. I can talk about how we made it secure, for example.
Yeah.
But the idea behind it was, look, no one's having diabetes for fun. And even though you have a lot of charts, like it's still more work, I felt, to sometimes look at a chart and like figure out, like maybe at least for me, sometimes I want to just ask someone, hey, like, is it okay? Like, is anything that I should pay attention to currently? Any weird things going on that are out of the normal? Because every bit of effort that I need to put into my therapy is a bit against some level of resistance, I would say, because it's such a forced thing. Like I don't have an option often, and so I mean, who does with type 1? But and so I wanted to make it as easy as possible, and for me, natural language seemed like a good next step to explore, at least. And this incredible boom of with those things. ChatGPT is called a large language model. For anyone who doesn't know and wants to Google this, it's basically an AI machine learning model who's good in summarizing text or pretending to know. Details I think are not so important currently, but it was a good method to try out, to play with it, to give it my data and say, okay, look, this is the data because it's good at summarizing. What can you tell me about that? And it was actually quite useful. And that was when I was like, okay, maybe there's something to be said or to be experimented with, at least, in terms of a different access to your data, like actually talking to it more than just having to figure out like every chart or every behavior yourself. But obviously there's caveats to this. So those machine learning models, those large language models, have problems on their own. Like there is some weaknesses that they have for sure. And probably the largest voice that I can already, or that I've experienced on and offline, is that they're not made for calculating things necessarily. So they're very good at writing text and making it sound nice and as you want it to sound, essentially. But they're not good at like complex calculations, for example. And they're not essentially, they don't have an intrinsic thought. They're just responding and summarizing data, essentially. And so there's a question on, is that even a good idea to try? And so after my evaluation, I was like, I think it's good enough to give it a shot. There's a large disclaimer like, hey, don't do anything that Sam tells you to do necessarily. It's a trick. And also we actually have two models running. One that checks what Sam is doing. Interesting. Okay, that's a similar reaction, I think. That was
that's you've recently done a macOS update, or I love it. So this happened so like when you do this, I think it does something. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's and that gives a bubble. Yeah.
Oh, we both get it.
Oh yeah, no. Do your software updates, guys. It's brilliant. Software updates for the Mac. It's sorry, go on. Yeah.
Anyway, so we have two models basically, or two, let's say, large language models that kind of check on each other, and there's a lot of security layers, I would say, that try to prevent from anything weird being reported, anything weird being said. But this is obviously a concern with those models because they're not potentially made for this use case, but they're made for data summary. And so I thought that was a good idea to try, and it's an experiment. So it's an interface to the AI. There's another part about data privacy, which people were concerned on initially, is like, I'm going to share my data with OpenAI, essentially. That is true only to a certain extent. So what we did is we decided that we're going to summarize everything. So it's actually anonymous data in the strictest sense that you can apply it to, so that OpenAI doesn't get anything, and we're routing everything through like a separate pathway in the internet that makes OpenAI not realize which phone you have or who you are actually. So we're trying to be very cautious about privacy, but also still allow aggregated data to be summarized. And so I would say it's a very cool experiment. I do find myself using it, but I would say let's see how the uptick is and if people like it or not. For me it's a very fun experiment. But I'm curious how you found it. I think in general, this is something that's going to happen more and more. I'm not sure if it's already good enough. That's my guess sometimes.
Yeah, so I've used it outside of diabetes. I've used the ChatGPT, and I've been lucky enough to use Bard's models through. In my day job, we use Workspace, and they have integration with Bard, which is kind of the Google equivalent. And email is such a good example for me. Takes a massive email written by someone who has a lot of time that I don't have. I do wonder where these people find their time to write like massive emails. They probably use ChatGPT to write a long email, and then I use it to shorten that email to like 3 bullet points because I need the information. So I've been using it in that. Like that is like 90% of society is just expanding your writing through models, and then making them shorter when you actually receive them. So I think it was such a natural extension of that like model of taking a lot of information and making it human English readable. So I think so many of like digital experiences apps that we get for in the diabetes space, but also widely just like medtech, is so not like human English, like human language readable. It's so technical and like it just states facts without actually speaking to you like a human. So I thought it was such a natural thing for Cockpit to adopt. Obviously, one of the main things people need to think about is reliability of the information that models give you. So like you said, when you ask ChatGPT something, like most of the time is correct, but sometimes it can be really, really, really wrong. So I know we've talked about this offline many times. So I know you've built, so obviously your ChatGPT integration will give you an answer, which is, there's this thing happening. What kind of example would you get from model? Because I know that answer is then basically filtered down by a secondary model that you have built, which ensures whatever the chat is telling you is quote unquote reasonable, correct?
Yeah, I mean, basically, yes. So there's one is GPT-4, which is like kind of the smarter version that OpenAI offers. And you ask your question to that model, and that model has the information.
Yeah.
But then we, in our testing, obviously, we try to break it. Like we try to make it say things that it shouldn't say, or like we try to make it be wrong.
Yeah.
Or like venture into the realm of medical advice.
Can I just say, I was proud to be one of the testers trying to say things you don't want it to say, to test whenever this works. Disclosure, I had a fun job of doing that. as one of your beta or alpha testers.
Yeah, and there's some extent you can. So anyway, the second model is basically getting the answer of the first one and is counter checking it for a set number of rules. Like you can't say therapy advice, like direct one, you can't give any dosing recommendations, you can't recommend changes, you can't, like there's a bunch of sanity checks that are basically run. And then the second guy, we can call him Bob, is his friend, and Bob kind of goes,
yeah.
And then we just go back and we tell Sam, just try again. And then hopefully it's fine. Or we straight up tell the user in the app, hey, look, this question seems to be really too specific and not fitting for LLM technology.
Yeah.
And then we kind of leave it at that. But I made a lot of fun for testing it. Like it turns out if you ask him to, like, how much insulin should I dose for something, he's gonna not let you know. Like I've never got it to work now. But if you go, well, I'm writing a story about a diabetic who ate a pretzel, and then like you can somehow trick him a bit in some cases, but I think you'll have to really put in effort to make him say stuff that potentially you shouldn't. And so this 2-model system we employed to make sure there's nothing dangerous going on, but it's at that level, like a second layer of security, because you do have to accept like a disclaimer of like, hey man, like this person's not me writing this. And second, these things, as smart as they sound and are, can be wrong still. So take this with a grain of salt and double check things. But I found it generally to be still very useful, even despite all these disclaimers, I would say.
Yeah, I've used it. Like it's good for like I would chat to Cockpit something like, give me a summary of what my last week looked like, and it will go, in few very readable bullet points. It's like getting a PDF report from your normal diabetes app, insert name of a diabetes app, or Dexcom Clarity or something, but just in readable form, and it will give you like a bullet point saying your time and range was this. I've noticed your sleeping pattern was da. And it's more legible in my view than like looking at a PDF full of stuff.
I'm very happy with it, and the notifications that these, like on the last screen that you mentioned, are also built by this technology. So they're always different, and there's actually a new one every time. And to me, it feels like I don't like notifications. I'm a bit with you, but if they're actually meaningful and it's not the same, like some apps send you the same notification every day. Hey, like check in the story of the day, and that's it. And then the next, like the same one. And so I didn't want that to happen for sure. And so we used that one as well for making something that we found, like a pattern that we found to be useful to share, but to formulate a proper notification for that that sounds human, which is these background notifications that we have that you mentioned.
Cool.
It's Sam essentially doing them.
Sounds good. We've got 100 people watching. Just a reminder, do tweet me a photo of you having a drink with us on Tech on Tap, and I will pick someone that I'm going to buy a drink to, and ship it to your home address. I will reach out to you via DM and let me know your address so I can ship you something. Okay, I'm going to get to the questions because there's quite a few. The one that I've seen like a number of times already is obviously this is iPhone. For our friends who, for a number of reasons that I don't understand, choose to use Android. No, I'm joking. No, there are some very good reasons to use Android devices. I feel like I just lost half of my subscribers in making that statement. What about Android, Lucas?
Yeah, so I mean, as you may or may not know, I think sometimes people don't realize, but this is a very evening holiday project. So we're a very small team. It's also not only me. So also, if people maybe don't realize, there's a couple of other people. I couldn't make the app look that good without Oleg. There is Manu and Peter, and you can actually find the people in the settings at the very bottom. You can find all the people who actually help doing this. But it's all our free time, and we're not. It's not our day job, and we're doing it for free essentially. And so
it's very much a community project, isn't it?
It's a pure time issue. We would really like to do that. And we hope we can get to it. The only other exception that we had, which was a bit selling in a way, which also meant we started with iOS. First, I'm from the iOS side. I was an iOS developer for a number of years. And also on Android, the central health information hub did work a bit differently. But they're reworking it now. So it actually, I think, would be now possible. Look, I mean, if anyone listening and you want to help coding an Android variant of it, please get in touch. Seriously.
Get in touch with Lucas, 100%. Because I think from a technical perspective, what language is it written in?
So on iOS, it's Swift, which is the native language that is basically for all apps. And for Android, it's up to you. But Kotlin is the current standard, which is a good choose, which is pretty similar to Swift in some sense. But that doesn't mean I can code Android, sadly. So we're looking into it, but it's difficult to find the time to really build it up from the ground, because it's actually a lot of work. Like it's thousands of hours and like many thousands of hours who went into the iOS app, like of us all, and so finding the time is quite difficult.
When did this like start Cockpit?
That's a good question. I should know this. I would say probably 2.5, 3 years ago by now, something like that. But it looked really different in the very beginning. Like it didn't look like it does now. And so it was many evenings. I think the last years I sacrificed basically all my holiday for this, for example, and a lot of weekends and evenings. Because the feedback is so nice that people get. Really, yesterday I had breakfast today with a friend, and he asked me how seeing users actually using it was. And I told him that even when it was 10 people using it, 10 people is not a lot of people for using an app necessarily, if you think about it in the grand scale of apps in general. But if I would have, like, I sat there over there and I imagined just 10 people using the thing and finding it useful. That's a lot of people on some, like on my level.
Yeah.
If it's actual people, that's not bad at all. And so it grew naturally.
Yeah.
Android is definitely on the list as
Yeah.
soon as we can make it work. And that's what kept us going, is the feedback from people and the genuine happiness that we see from people, and the ratings and the exchange on Facebook that's happening. So
Yeah.
if you want to help in any way, share the good news, and maybe we can find more time and resources to get Android going, for example.
Get in touch. I've got a really good question on the actual validity of so obviously all of these insights are based on data you get from either Apple Health, which is kind of a library of health and general med information in the Apple ecosystem. So that's from Apple Watch, iPhone, but also all of the third-party apps. So Dexcom can write data into Apple Health. The pumps don't write data into Apple Health, but
usually not, yeah.
Usually not, but DIYers can get insulin data into Apple Health by looping and things. So what's the what's the easiest way to add data into Apple Health, or just directly into Cockpit to give it more information, so it has more info to work with to get better insights? Would that be through Nights Count? Would that be the easiest, or Apple Health, or how would you go around it?
So generally, Apple Health is the best way of getting data into Cockpit, I would say. The reason for that is, and why Apple Health is a bit in an advantage over Night Scout, is it stores more types of data, like naturally, that it just has more different kinds of data, and you have a lot of apps that feed into it. So you get a lot of like different data types for very low effort.
Yeah.
And the interface, programmatically speaking, the way how you can pull data out is very well done.
Right.
Or at least it's fairly standardized. Whereas Night Scout, you typically have, carbs and insulin and maybe some other things, as well as CGM, obviously. But it doesn't always contain as much context like about sleep or steps or exercise necessarily.
Right.
Obviously, there's a lot of versions, and I don't know all of them. But the other problem with, apart from less data on Night Scout, is that Night Scout is, because it's an open source platform, and there is probably like hundreds of versions that people can build for themselves, the getting data out is always a bit different and can be varying through different versions.
Right.
And so Cockpit would have to know reliably how to pull data out of each one of those different versions to make that work seamlessly. And what I'm really concerned with is displaying data that's wrong.
Right.
Because despite us not being a medical device, we're just summarizing data that you have in your service in Apple Health or Night Scout. We obviously do our best to not display anything that's incorrect.
Yeah.
And Night Scout, the information is just more limited that we have, and also the security of knowing, if I tell you, Camille, I need steps. Right. With Apple Health, I'm sure I get steps back. With Night Scout, is it steps or is it actually exercise minutes, which could be for some weird reason mixed up or something, and then it becomes a bit dicey. So if I could recommend it, Apple Health is a better option. Yeah. But I know many have Night Scout, and since we built it for the community, we included it. But I know that some Night Scout versions don't work well. It's just I think I look into five requests like this every week, and trying to figure out what's going on. And people send me their address, and I try it on my computer here and on my phone, and like barely a week when I find the same problem twice, to be honest. Like it's self-hosted somewhere, and then the hosting service didn't give you enough capacity to actually load, like export that much data, or it's a version that I haven't seen yet, or there's a multitude of issues that can happen. Right. And so it's more of a whack-a-mole game than Apple Health is. That's the whole truth. Yeah. We're trying to improve, but it's difficult to support all the versions that exist, sadly. It's just also keeps updating all the time. So it's not once done and then I know all the versions and then we're safe. Yeah. Because but like tomorrow is going to be a new version that maybe works differently than the old one. Right. And then that's difficult for us.
And just to get our bases covered, for your for the cockpits themselves, do you call them cockpits, like the homepage? Is that what you call cockpits? That's a cockpit, isn't it? Yeah. For your cockpit and for all of the chat magic with Sam and Bob and notifications, etc., what kind of data types do you get from health and Night Scout? So sleep, activity like steps, obviously insulin, glucose. Could you talk us through those? Do you remember those top of your head?
Yeah. So I mean, I also have the app somewhere on my phone, but I think you covered most of it. So the base things we get is for sure, obviously glucose, carbs, insulin.
Yep.
Then we get some activity-related data,
Yep.
which you can have, which is steps, exercise, and sleep. And then what we do in addition is we're trying to kind of do meta metrics, if you want. So one example that I personally like is the time when you start eating something, and I like that because it's a decision actually. Because if someone tells you you should like not have a standard deviation that's as high, I'm like, cool, but I can't lower that willingly. But what I can change is I cannot eat when I'm 200, for example. And so what Cockpit does with the information is it also creates these kind of meta behaviors in some cases where it tries to visualize, okay, how did you do with when you start eating? What was your blood sugar, for example? And so that's all of those are metrics that Sam will receive. The difference between Night Scout and Apple Health is that first you don't get the contextual stuff like steps and exercise and sleep, because that's just most of the time not in there. And then secondly, the other difference is basal insulin. So you get, obviously Night Scout has insulin, but the way how they represent basal and bolus insulin and correction and whatever, that varies quite a lot. And so when I tried doing that, it came up wrong a number of times with different Night Scout versions and instances.
Right.
And so that's the reason why it currently doesn't support the split. Like it only gives you insulin for Night Scout, but all of this information still goes to Sam. There's just a limit on what we can calculate in terms of these meta metrics, if you want.
Yeah. And this might be quite a technical question. Someone's asked about the validity of the data itself. So I guess technically on Apple Health especially, you can just manually add like I don't know, you could enter an incorrect, if you don't have an Apple Watch, you could enter that you had 50,000 steps, but actually you meant 5,000 steps, right?
Or your kilogram worth of bagels yesterday. Right.
Which actually, people who loop probably know it's so easy to like sometimes forget like 0.5 to 5.0. Like it's so easy when you enter in numbers to make those mistakes. What's your thinking on that? Any does your algorithm on the app is it able to detect things are wrong data?
We thought about that. I think generally the rule that I would have with Cockpit is you are responsible for the data that you put in, essentially, because we cannot take, like I'll never know if you actually had a kilogram of bagels yesterday or not.
Right.
And then the question is also, let's say I'll find, or Cockpit finds, because I'm not looking at everything. The Cockpit finds like an unusual high steps count, for example, or whatever else, workout count. What like the question is, what is the next step then? Do you just omit the data? You tell the user but then you need to build a whole system on correcting it or sending him back to Apple Health to correct it there. But then, so it's quite you get into a bit of a rabbit hole in terms of even when you could say something is wrong, how do you act afterwards?
Right.
So my rule for Cockpit generally has been, it visualizes the data that you have in Apple Health.
Yeah.
You need to do a bit of a job on yourself, sadly, at the moment, to make sure that this is somewhat useful data in there. If you just enter 70 times 900 as a blood sugar, it will display you a not very good time and range, probably.
Yeah.
And so it's not really. I don't think we can guarantee or even want to guarantee the validity of the data in Apple Health, which is one-to-one what Cockpit will display. In terms of the validity of the metrics themselves that we calculate, that is tested pretty thoroughly.
Right.
But obviously, if you find something to be wrong, then please reach out and we can pretty sure fix that very quickly.
Yeah.
But in terms of validity of the Apple Health data itself, difficult. Difficult to spot what actually is a problem, and also difficult to spot what to do about it afterwards. Once you spot something, I would say.
Sounds good. People are asking what beer we're drinking. I'm drinking Brewdog Tom, and Lucas is drinking an Austrian.
Dieselburger, it's called.
Yeah, that one. There's no way I'm pronouncing that. Right. Any final questions? Any final questions? Let us know. And let us know what you're drinking as well. I will be sending one of you your favorite beer if you post that on socials. Cool. I've got 2 closing questions whilst we wait for any final questions from people. Yeah, I need to. This is everyone who hasn't tuned in yet. So your Mac and your app, your like Mac webcam will automatically give you effects when you move your hands, which is hilarious for live streams. So you do this and balloons happen. We've been enjoying that all evening. Right, I've got 2 questions to close off. First one, what's a piece of tech, Lucas, that you can't live without? And it cannot be something as basic as an iPhone. It has to be something better than that. What's something piece of tech, doesn't have to be diabetes tech, because I know you obviously are type 1, but any piece of tech you can't live without.
Yeah, so if we exclude Mac and iPhone, all those like super daily devices,
yeah.
What about what could be something that was? I think there's 2 things that I would think about. First is my camera, because I'm a hobby photographer, and so that's quite an amazing piece of technology, despite not being like any new.
What do you shoot with?
Like a Sony Alpha, but like an older model. It's not the newest cool model.
Okay.
But I'm still very impressed with it, and it's definitely good enough for me, and was good enough to take the pictures behind me.
Oh, nice. So nature photography you like, or landscape photography?
Yeah, but whatever happens to not run fast enough, essentially. Okay. Which landscape is very good for that.
Sounds good. Yeah.
And so the camera, and the only other thing that I know if like breaks today, I'll get new ones, is probably headphones.
Right.
That's the other thing that I can hardly live without, but it's less original than the camera, I would say. But if those break, you're gonna find me at some store tomorrow at 9 and like hand money over to get new ones.
Yeah. Those were Max, AirPod Maxes, right? But
yeah, exactly.
Red cups and black, you've changed those, didn't you? That's not like.
Yeah. I thought they would be orange. Turns out they're not orange.
Wait, so did you buy? Wait! This is a tech exclusive. Did you buy 2 Max headphones to
no.
have insides of a different color?
Yeah, but you have to buy replacement ones. I have those like since those came out.
Okay.
And the first ear cups, I'm not sure if you know, but they're very like easy to take off.
Yeah.
And they just got pretty filthy with time. And so I just bought replacement ones, and I thought it would be fun to buy a different color. Although this color wasn't what I expected it to be, but it's fine. Yeah. No, it's replacement ones.
It's like orangey reddish, isn't it?
Yeah, like it says orange, but it's really only orange on the back, which no one can see. It's pink.
Okay.
I mean, trying to be confident enough to pull off pink.
Yeah.
Orange would have been easier, I think.
Yeah. It's a statement. It's a really like designer thing to have your insides of a different color than your outsides. You need to be like you pulling it off well. You have pulling it off well. Right. My second question, if you could change anything about any diabetes tech product, what would you change and why? It can be software or hardware. So any app that you use where you could change one thing, or any physical piece of hardware, so any CGM, any pump, any glucose monitor, or even something more, but even the pen. If you could change one thing, if you were like the CEO of the Diabetes Inc. worldwide, what would you change? If you had my job of controlling the world for like a day, what would you do?
We'll have to talk about that when I visit. What bothered me a lot, what I would try to change in most apps actually that I try to use is that I don't feel that apps for people with diabetes are human enough yet. In the sense of, if you talk about mental health apps or weight loss apps or any kind of other, like, let's say health apps, broadly speaking, then they don't tell you, well, you should just weigh less, which is for me equivalent with, you just have more time in range, Lucas. That's what you should do. That's not what you're doing. But they do try to focus on behavior. Like they try to see as a human and with behaviors and flaws, and they go like, well, maybe you can go take a walk once. Like next week, just take one walk on the afternoon, and then we'll see from there. But this change, this mindset of treating people with diabetes as humans, as human as people, or someone who want to lose weight or is struggling with mental health or something, I think that switch hasn't happened yet, and I think it's so wild to me that hasn't happened with diabetes apps yet, because specifically with type 1, we didn't ask for any of this. So it seems like such an obvious thing to try to change. I think that would be my one thing. And you can apply this to Dexcom, to Abbott, to OneDrop, to like a bunch of diabetes apps. I haven't seen this done well a lot, I would say. Obviously, and I'm sure there's one app, in case someone was like, but this app, yes, I'm sure there's some that did better, but generally speaking, in my perspective, it's not as good as it should be in terms of being human in some sense, you know?
Yeah, it's like, I think, not to put, I know some phenomenal designers who work on the apps you've mentioned who do a phenomenal job, but I think generally the way they have been designed from day one is you took a medical first design thinking, almost like what would a user interface for a hard doctor app look like, and just put it on a phone for a person living with diabetes, and it should be from a much more consumer angle than a medical angle. Would you agree with that?
We were not doctors. We didn't choose this.
Right.
So it's the wrong approach, I think. It should be holistic and more human first. Like every time when someone says, well, this app is not doing well, no one is using this app for diabetes enough, it's not the user's at fault. It's not the patient or the type 1. It's the app is not providing enough like valuable insights or value for the input you need to give. Like some apps are insane. Like the amount of work you have to do to get anything useful out of them is insane. And then the way how you get how you get the information out is not as mindful and as human as it could be. I think that's what I would try to change. And I mean, Cockpits is a very small step in that direction. It's just because at least it doesn't look like a medical app so much. I think. But there's a long way to go for me in the industry of diabetes and digital until we reach where some other areas in health are already. That's what I would probably say.
Yeah. Closing comment, actually. Something I didn't touch on. You touched on a little bit, but I didn't follow up on it. Is privacy. So talk us through, because I think especially in the digital space, so often, and maybe not in diabetes as much, but generally in digital apps, we see these massive data collectors just collecting so much information. And so often when your product is free, you are the product. So talk us through how data and security, privacy works for Cockpit. What can you see? I mean, I know it's a community project, so it's not like you're not a company from that perspective, but talk us through the data privacy side of Cockpit.
Sure. So I mean, from its inception, it was pretty focused on privacy because my day job was partly assuring privacy for users as well. So it was always a perspective that was in my mind. How Cockpit works is, and that's the reason why there's not even user accounts, like you don't have to enter any email or anything, is the reason because you don't necessarily have to. And all the processing, like Apple Health is on your phone, the data is not, like we don't receive that by default or anything.
Yep.
And all the processing, all the insights, everything like that happens on the device. So I don't see any of your data if you don't choose to share it. Like there is an option, an opt-in donation option that you can do to choose to help us generate more research and like newer insights maybe, because we need data to work with. But this is all an opt-in version, so you don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
And you're not going to lose any access to anything. And so everything is on device.
Yeah.
Literally, if you reach out to me and you have a bug or something, and you tell me, look, this shows like a weird number, I have 0 ways to know what number that's showing. You have to actually send me the data, because everything is stored and processed on device so far. And there's no email addresses collected. I can't reach out to anyone annoyingly with spam or something. That was always something that I found weird with some apps, where like you download them, first thing they want is email address. And I'm like, but why do you need my, like, you don't need my email address. Honestly, you don't.
You don't.
At first, I haven't checked out if I like your app even yet.
Yeah.
So don't give me that. And that's why in the beginning, I didn't do that, and it never occurred to me that we have to. I mean, maybe in the future we have to collect it for something specific, but as long as we don't have to, we don't collect the data. And all other data we collect is either opt-in, or you need to actually allow it via this Apple Health pop-up. So everything is done on device, except you choose it not to be, in terms of donating, for example. And I have barely any data about you if you don't choose to share it actively. The only thing I have to be transparent is obviously like that you used the app yesterday, just that I know how many people used it. And if the app crashes or something, then I get a report of that. But I don't know who you are. I just know that an app crashed on this phone somewhere on the world, so that I can fix it. But apart from those, let's say, operational metrics, we don't have anything that you didn't share actively and proactively opt in, and you don't have to. Obviously, it helps us out a lot to further the development, but you don't have to. And we'll keep it free in that manner for as long as we can afford it.
Right. Yeah, I think that on-device thing was something I really wanted to like mention, because it sounds so obvious that your data is your business and it should, like, those insights should happen on your device. But unfortunately, with so many apps, that is not the case. And they just aggregate so much, including some well-known diabetes apps. They aggregate all of that information to the cloud, process it locally, where you actually not fully in control of what they do with it. So yeah, kudos to ensuring that happens on device, and someone can be confident using it that like they still 100% in control of it. And looking at the live chat, it seems like you've got a few downloads tonight, so you should be getting more of those. And for those of you downloaded it tonight, the donate, talk us through the donate your data thing in the last 2 minutes before we close.
Sure, happy to. So I mean, if you download the app, and first, if you have any issues, just reach out to me. You'll find a button in the app to share feedback, or you go to website or something and you reach out if anything doesn't work. So I'm curious. And then if you find value in the app and you want to support its development, because I mean, we do have a subscription now, but this is also more or less optional to the project. So donating the data anonymously is an option you have to support the project. Anonymously means that we don't get any email addresses, obviously, that I don't have from the beginning, and there's nothing else that ever would lead back to you. So I don't even know who donated the data, to be honest. Since there's no email address and user account, I don't know who even donated. So, but it helps us tremendously for developing new features for the app that we then can ship to more people. So it's kind of it propels itself forward through the optional sharing of data that people choose to do, which helps us out greatly, but is opt-in. So do that if you feel that it creates value for you. We're very happy about that. Like every new user that actually choose to donate, like we get a message and like, hey, cool, someone actually wants to support, and it's very nice, and everyone gives like cool emojis to like more research we can do, but it's optional. So we're happy about it, and happy to talk more about the research we do at a later stage if we have time.
Yeah. So there are few. So I think Tidepool does a similar thing where you can donate your data to research. So I think I always try to advocate for those types of things because there is, for people who actually you can trust to have your data, to give them to you, to give your data to them, because I think so many players, we should be careful with who we share our data to. So I think that's good rule of thumb generally. But yeah, I think those are really cool projects because you can get a lot of insights. Cool. Thanks, Roland. Installed it 20 minutes ago, and he's loving it. Great job, Lucas. I've got a few more people who someone was saying they downloaded it, even though you're drinking a beer that they're not a big fan of. But cool. We will work on that next time. Cool. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I will be checking Twitter and Instagram for pictures of you with your drinks over the course of the next hour or so. And yeah, I will reach out to one of you with to get your address and what your favorite drink is so I can ship you something as a thank you for tuning in. And I will be back with another Tech on Tap on Tuesday in a few Tuesdays' time. I've got a few people I'm speaking to set the episode 2 up. Hope you enjoyed this, Lucas.
Very much so. I'm very honored to be the first guest, Camille.
Cool.
Very, very cool to be here.
And thanks to everyone else who tuned in live. See you later, guys.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm very curious. I hope questions come in if there's a problem.